Marty. Why don't we get up and greet each other and wish each other a happy parents' birthday? Yeah. Was that good? Do you feel good? Yeah. Hugging always makes me feel better. So, well, it's a beautiful home today. I've got some words to share with you. And kind of a report a little bit. Just first of all, I heard a week ago when they took the cake, when they went to Sam's Club and ordered the cake, and they ordered what they wanted written on it. All the ladies in the bakery came to me and said, wow, that's what you want on there? Happy 52nd True Heavenly Parents Day. Happy 9976 True Parents Birthday. We were like, wow, what's Heavenly Parent? And there was a teaching moment. She said, that's Heavenly Father, that's God. Oh. I just thought it was such a special little thing that, just in the ordering of a cake, for today, wow, I feel like it's been a really busy couple of weeks for me. I was in Chicago when it was a little blur, but I got there and it was like minus 20. By the time I left, it was almost 50 degrees. So I had gone through, we brought the Texas heat. Yeah. That's right. And the other thing about it was that it was 3 things in one. It was like a restart of the American Clergy Leadership Conference. And I'm sorry, I'm not speaking with a microphone. Better hold one. There we go. I always think I project enough, but I guess I don't. So it was like a new beginning, a relaunching of the American Clergy Leadership Conference under the new leadership of Dr. Kim, Ki-Hood Kim, and his co-chair is a United Methodist bishop and pastor, Bishop Dr. Luan Rouse. Dr. T.L. Barrett, you know him. T.L. Barrett calls him, whenever he's there, he says, Rouse is in the house. And he has an amazing speaking ability. He gets going and you almost feel like Martin Luther King Jr. is with him. But it's not theatrical, it's not just showy, it's really deep and profound. So actually what I was so moved by, in the opening session, there was the 3 things that were going on were the restart of ACLC. The second thing was the True Family Values Awards banquet, I think the 27th, without ever failing to have one. 27 years, amazing. And then the third day I was there was Sunday. Reverend Jackson got back here on Saturday night. I stayed there for one more night to represent him and all of us at the opening, the dedication of the Chicago Family Church. But going back to the first day, the relaunching of the American Clergy Leadership Conference. Now, Dr. Luan Rouse, he's already got his doctorate degrees in theology, and so he's actually, he's a teacher at the Unification Theological Seminary, which even though it doesn't use the campus in upstate New York, it has a campus in New York City at 4 West 43rd Street, that building there. And there he gets to meet people like Dr. Mickler and other professors that we have at UTS. And he's really learned a lot from them. He's very, very open. And so our gathering had about 120 people. It was about half Unificationist and half Christian pastors who are co-chairs in their various areas of the country. So when he first got up, he was talking about how he really wants to encourage the Family Federation for World Peace, the brothers and sisters within the Family Federation for World Peace, to know that they are truly Christian, that their hearts yearn and beat for the establishment of God's kingdom, perhaps even more than the traditional Christian. And he wanted also to lift us up in front of the Christian pastors. And he chose a quote from Ecclesiastes. I won't go there today, but the quote was, in a way, like, how precious are those who seek for God's righteousness and who seek for God's kingdom. And then he asked all the Unificationists to stand up, the traditional Christian pastors to stay in their seats. And guess what he did? He had us stand up and read the family pledge, vow by vow. He would stop after every one and then comment to the pastors that were there and to us. It was so profound. It was so profound to have a Christian minister be blown away by the contents of the family pledge and try to impart that to the fellow ministers that were there. Well, what do you think effect that had on me, or had on us? For me, it was almost like reading the pledge for like a whole new time. Because there was a Christian pastor saying, okay, click, click, number 1, together. And then we would all read it in unison. After a time, some of the Christian pastors stood up. They wanted to read it too.
He was trying to get across that in every verse, in every vow, there's a pledge that we do this, we strive to do it, centered on true love. It was so moving. After that session, I had to just go up to him and had to express to him, maybe on behalf of what I felt were a lot of other unificationists who couldn't be there, how grateful I was that he could see the value of our pledge and the value of our faith, aspiring to such incredible things, to make a home for God, to not just stop at being filial sons and daughters, but strive to be patriots and saints, to strive to be holy sons and daughters of God, to establish the four realms of heart, to make a universal family that encompasses everyone, to unite the spirit world and the physical world, to embody true parents in our daily lives, to establish Shimjung culture, and really live with God with absolute love and faith and obedience. Anyway, it was just, wow. I was like, thank you, I came here. Thank you that I could come and listen to this. And there were other amazing testimonies. I'm so sorry. I was actually, I was called out of the room to do logistical things, because somehow that's also one of my fortes, I guess. But so I didn't get to attend the rest of that afternoon and evening of that meeting. But I was hearing a little bit outside the door of what was going on there. Many, many pastors were sharing their testimonies. One minister who I've known really well since my days as a district pastor, his name is Reverend Jesse Dampre. He's the former president of the Chamber of Commerce of Albuquerque, a minister formerly of, the AME Church. He is now a Methodist minister and has a large house of worship. When I first met him, when he shared his testimony, that when he had first been met by our movement, that he had been divorced. He'd been divorced already for several years. He had never remarried. His wife remarried. It's a similar story to T.L. Barrett's story. So Dampre is from Ghana. His wife is an African American from America. And so in a way, two different worlds, you know. Our African brothers and sisters can probably attest to that, you know, coming here from Africa, but having your culture intact, and then the history of African Americans in America as descendants of slaves, it's a different, many times, a mindset and cultural mindset. And they went on a vacation together, I think celebrating one of their anniversaries. They come back and she says, I want a divorce. And they divorce. He is just broken. And almost all the children kind of stick with him. They were young enough, I think, to maybe choose to go with their mother, but they just loved their dad. They liked the work that he was doing as a minister. How he became the president of the Chamber of Commerce, besides being a minister, he had a state farm insurance agency. And he developed that really, really well. So he's very capable. He's very able to multitask and to do many things. And so he would always attend our things, but feel so ashamed that he had lost his family. And sometimes I roomed with him at various events that we went to together. And he shared, actually, the bitterness that it had left him. He had a lot of anger in his heart, that he didn't see it coming. He didn't see this breakup coming in his relationship with his wife. And she'd given him these beautiful children, and yet it felt like something like a hole for him. And eventually, in the rounds of ACLC, he heard about T.L. Barrett's testimony, and he began to wonder, could it be possible? Could it be possible that his wife Marcia would come back to him? And he never gave up. And in 2010, he happened to go to a graduation party that she was having for one of their children. And while they were there, she's the one that opened the door and said, I don't know why I ever left you. I don't know why I ever left you. You know, she'd already gotten out of the relationship she'd gone to. And so he was so happy that he could get her back and they could be blessed. And he gave that testimony there. Many people were crying and moved. And other ministers gave their testimonies as well there. It was an amazing feeling. I felt like the American Clergy Leadership Conference really was starting over again, and that this time it was a partnership of the Family Federation and the American Clergy Leadership Conference together, determining that we would utilize this outreach to churches as a means of educating them about the blessing, and having ministers who can give testimonies, riveting testimonies, about how their whole life was changed through the blessing. I wasn't sure how I was going to begin today, because I just found out that I had this gig a little while ago. But, and Reverend Jackson really wanted me to, the meat and potatoes of today is a letter from our new national president, Damian Dunkley. He actually has written 2 letters to us, and I think it would be too exhaustive for me to read them both. But before I get off track, I just also want to thank the band for your beautiful music today. And thank you for also singing Blessing of Glory. On this, our true parents' birthday, it's so meaningful to sing a song that was written by our father. Did you see the date? What was the date? 1950. Would you say that was the high point of his life? Where was he in 1950? He was in Hungnam. He was in Hungnam, and yet able to pen this poem to God, which would later be put to music by a follower in the, just incredible. It says 1950 because that's when it was penned. The fellow who composed the music for it, that didn't happen until sometime in the 60s. But the words were penned in hell, singing about the blessing of glory. Just such a testament to our true parents' lives and their victory over the most difficult circumstances with true love. Mother was just probably 6 or 7 at the time that he wrote that. And she had just made, probably, or was in the process of making her way down to Busan, out of North Korea, out of Seoul, to places safer than up there. So now, Isaac, would you put up this quote? Damien uses this quote by True Father in his second letter, but it's kind of central even to the point of his first letter. And maybe we can read it together. So, excerpt from Home Church, the words of Reverend Moon. Together, so far, the entire religious goal has been how I, as an individual, can be saved. But our goal is not individual salvation. We are going to bring the entire tribe into heaven at once. If your 360 homes have faith in you and believe in you, they will be saved. Right? As you are saved, they will be saved. In the history of religion, this kind of privilege never existed. Religion has never before included salvation for the whole family, but rather encouraged separation and meditation alone in the mountains. Now I am proclaiming Go love your wife and your husband. Love your children and love your neighbors and bring them together into the kingdom of heaven. Such a privilege never existed until this time in history. An amazing era has arrived. Home church is the privilege God has given to you, saying, if you set the conditions to let the people know the truth and love you, He will save everyone you recommend in your 360 homes. Actually, in order to come to perfection, you have to go through all these paths. In the home church, you are creating a miniature world, but God will still give you full credit. Jesus gave the keys of the kingdom of heaven to Simon Peter for individual salvation. But now I am handing out the key that can save the entire tribe as one unit. I am anointing you as messiahs, and whomever you bring shall have salvation. What a promise! Those are not empty words, but a promise that will be redeemed in the kingdom of heaven in spirit world. So, Damien found that quote from a book called Home Church. You can go back to the first slide, son. Home Church, the words of Reverend Sum Young Moon. So actually, at the Family Fed website in January, they posted Damien's letter to our whole movement. When he asked me if I had read it, I couldn't honestly say I had raised my hand, that I'd read it. He asked me at a dinner table or a lunch table when I was there in Chicago. I felt so sorry. I'd seen it, but I hadn't read it. And I felt remiss that I hadn't, especially since he attempted to pour his heart out in that first letter. But I find that in his second letter, it's even more profound. But I want to do what Reverend Jackson told me to do. And so I've selected a section from his first letter. So just to let you know, in the background of this letter, he's just reporting that he and the other sub-regional leaders, including our own Reverend Jackson, they were called to New York, East Garden, and they had a breakfast with True Mother in the East Garden breakfast room, dining room. And then after that, at that meeting, that's when Damien was told, Mother just pointed to him, Damien, you're the new president of the Family Federation for the Heavenly USA. Dr. Kim didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. And then very quickly, Mother went to Richard Busing. I said, Reverend Busing, I appreciate what you've done. Please don't feel sorry. I want you now to be in charge of the Senior Pastors Association. So now I'll start reading from Damien's letter. We also just completed a 3-day intensive meeting with Dr. Kim and the sub-regional directors in New York. In that meeting, we determined that above all else, the absolute priority of the American movement in 2019 is for us all to fulfill our Heavenly Tribal Messiahship. Heavenly Tribal Messiahship will now be the central ministry of the American movement. On that foundation, we will be able to embrace Christianity and work together to fulfill the responsibility of this great nation. The theme of the meeting could be summed up as, quote, we will bring victory of national restoration by 2020. So let's keep it simple and keep our eye on the most important areas that will support that victory, end of quote. We are a providential people and we are equipped for this task. We are Americans blessed by God for this time so that we may recognize, attend, and proclaim true parents to the world, thereby bringing to conclusion the long, painful history of God's providence of restoration. We are blessed families. God has given us power to forgive and to bless and to clean our environment. We have the power to change people's lives. We have the power to change people's lineage to God's lineage. This is a big deal. We will bring about national restoration by 2020. In this year, we will see America unleash its full potential. Every blessed family in America will fulfill tribal messiahship and become co-owners and co-creators of the national offering that we will bring to Mother in February of 2020. At breakfast, True Mother said, quote, do not think for one moment that it is not possible. Damien says, let me repeat. on her behalf. Don't think for one moment that it's not possible. We will bring about national restoration within this year for God. The second letter, thank you, Damien. He's just amazing. I heard him speak last Sunday in Chicago. And this second letter is basically his sermon in Chicago. Because when he attended that ACLC meeting, he too was moved in a new way. Dr. Luan Rouse, he and his wife also have a strong testimony about the blessing. They're an amazing couple. They're both from South Carolina. Dr. Rouse must be close to my age, but doesn't look it. He's black and she's white. They have 5 children. They must have gone through I don't know what. But when you see her speak and you hear her speak, oh dear, it's like this one woman from South Carolina who just, it's just amazing to hear her voice and the lilt in her voice, the South Carolinian twang she has. And she just talks about her husband, her man, and it's really, really precious. And they are really together. They're in this together. It is so wonderful. So what Damien was sharing with us last Sunday, and what he shares in this second letter, which I think Isaac sent out to, did you send it to everyone? Okay. So you should look for an email from Isaac. The title of his second letter is, not us, but heaven determines the conditions for victory. So he's going to try to get a point across in his letter that it's not, the conditions for victory are not set by us. I mean, we set them in physical motion, but the standard that has been established is from God. If God says, I want you to do this, then it's God judging whether we did it or not. It's not us. And so this is February 6th. This is after the ACLC gathering. This is after Sunday service in Chicago. He's on an Amtrak train, and he knows that in a few hours he's going to be 30,000 feet above the earth and not be able to really complete this letter. So he starts with the words that we've just read from Home Church, the words of Reverend Moon. And what is his takeaway? His takeaway is actually amazing. It's really simple. So he goes, tribal messiahship is to the family what marriage is to the individual. Right? So as individuals, some of us wonder if we'll ever be prepared for marriage. But really, an individual is going to have to go beyond themselves and live beyond themselves to really enjoy a beautiful and happy marriage. And a family is going to have to do the same thing. It has to live beyond the sake of its own self. He goes on to say, the individual finds their greatest happiness in family life, and the family finds its true happiness in spreading that blessing to others in their tribe. If the individual lives, unfortunately, for him or herself only, their own happiness, the health of the family will be stunted. If the family lives predominantly for its own happiness, then their growth and happiness will be stunted. Tribal messiahship is what draws the family beyond itself to serve together for the sake of the whole. Specifically, we are asked to share the blessing of true parents. And by the way, that's a good thing. Tribal messiahship is not a church growth program or agenda. Did you hear that? Yeah. So it's not, I told you that the other day, John, yesterday when you came to my office. And I hadn't even read this yet. But I know that to be the case. Our sharing the blessing with others is not about them becoming unificationist or coming here to the family church. If they want to, that's fantastic. If the outgrowth of their relationship with us is they want to spend more time with us and create community with us, that's fantastic. But that's not the agenda. The agenda is to bless their marriages. The agenda is to bring them into the lineage of God. Even if we think, oh, wow, what a slight condition it is. Who's the judge of that? It's God, not us. So he goes on to say, tribal messiahship is not a church growth program or agenda. It is our salvation. Yes, it requires change. It requires coming out of our comfort zone, and it forces our hearts to stretch and grow beyond the family level. But perhaps more surprisingly to some, our actual happiness depends on it. The health of our families depends on it. We cannot fully realize our happiness and potential as blessed couples without blessed central families without fulfilling tribal messiahship. If we care about the quality of our marriage, or we care about our parent-child relationships, and want to overcome the challenges in our families and communities, a good doctor would prescribe tribal messiahship as the cure. Which doctor? True parents. Because he got a lot of feedback from his first letter, and many of it was really positive, but then there are other people who are like, oh, come on. Do you really believe in a year? Do you really believe in a year? And he said, I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from. Or he said he gets letters from people saying, I already did that. I did that in the 1980s. I did that in the 1990s. I did that before. Well, as you all know, whatever you did in the 1990s, whatever you did before, you still can count that. You can still, that's part of your 430. But actually, look at that Father's words. What is Father proclaiming on that third paragraph? Yusuke, that third paragraph, can you read it out loud? Right. Yeah. Actually, I probably should have not asked you to read that. I should have asked Uncle Charles to read that. Uncle Charles, read it. Right. Yeah. So, tribal messiahship is not just starting out there. It starts in my home. It starts in me living the kingdom in my home, living the joys of the blessed life in my home, and then going out with that joy, going out with that love, and wanting to share that love. And this, I'll try to wrap up his second letter, which is 3 pages long, at 10.5 font. So I'm sparing you a lot, but I hope you do take the time to read it. It's really from his heart. To conclude, tribal messiahship starts with loving your spouse, your children, your parents, and your family. It starts with recognizing and being grateful for the blessings God has already given to you. It starts with recognizing the people God has brought into your life. No matter how humble or how difficult your situation may be, the ingredients for your successful next steps are right in front of you. It is that new action, walking in the right direction together and in unity, that will bring about a great change in your life, in your family, and in the movement. Then together we will spark we will be the spark that can awaken Christianity to fulfill its promise and allow heaven to work miracles and revive this nation. What that kind of nation serves when that kind of nation serves the world, will God not help us heal all of our internal problems along the way? This is a very powerful last paragraph. He says, if we go out and we really invest in our families, and we really invest in our neighborhood, and we really invest in blessing others, what is the worst that could happen? What if this all turns out not to be true? Then what will we say? Will we say that we wasted our time to love our spouse? Will we say that we wasted our time to love our families? Will we say that we wasted our time to love our brothers and sisters in the community, to ask for forgiveness and work together? Will we say we wasted our time to pray and work together to bless those in our neighborhood? Will we say we wasted our time to share the blessing that heaven has toiled for thousands of years to give? Will we say we wasted our time to knock on the doors of our Christian brothers and sisters, the ones who laid the foundation upon which we stand? Will we say we wasted our time to bless Christian ministers and have them bless their congregations? Will we say we wasted our time to make them our friends? Will we say we wasted our time to seek to unite with our true parents and follow true mother's clear and simple direction? I believe that if we avoid debating true mother's simple request and instead focus on laying the foundation for the victory, we will already feel that the heavenly kingdom growing within us and around us. And then no matter what happens in 2020, we will not say we have wasted our time. Surely we will say we have done a good thing. And if we do this for the sake of our nation, then surely God will finally be able to say, this nation is my son, in whom I am well pleased. And with that, we will be able to serve the world from our rightful position as eldest son. Have any of you been able to catch some of Aunt Laura Hornbeck's post on Facebook? How many have been able to see some of the images and pictures from Korea, from the World Summit? The World Summit, the opening session, there were all these amazing places up on the stage reserved for sitting presidents. I think there were like 6 or 7 sitting presidents. The MC of the program, co-MCs of the program, were a woman vice president of some South American or Central American country and Reverend Jenkins. They were the co-MCs of the World Summit. And the theme of the World Summit, of course, had to do with world peace and the global significance of Korea and the reunification of Korea. And there were some heavy hitters there, yeah. I don't know all the names of the presidents of the nations that were there. I wish I did. I do know that from America, Vice President Dick Cheney talked about security on the peninsula and gave his thanks to Mother Moon and to the Universal Peace Federation for having the vision to organize the World Summit. And I heard that Newt Gingrich, who attended with his wife, also was very gracious to True Mother, as were all these heads of state. It was quite amazing. And we gathered here last night. We watched a little bit of the pledge service, and we also at 7 o'clock, 6:30, started watching some of the celebration at the stadium. What time is it? Oh, we started a little bit late. I just want to add, I don't know if I should talk about this or not. You know how you don't want to talk about anything that might jinx something. I think I told you last time that when we had the American Clergy Leadership Conference gathering here in January, I really felt God encouraging me in incredible ways to have people like Greg Beecham from Christ Church down the freeway as one of our speakers, or to have stake president of the Dallas stake, President Mark Romney, speak here as well. The caliber of people. Actually, when I went to Chicago, it's okay, Heavenly Parents? So one of my wife and I made personal and public wish papers. And my wish paper was and is for God to use me to touch and find a John the Baptist or John the Baptist, people who are amazing people of character, of devotion to their callings, who have a humility, an inborn humility, to be able to see something in others and not push away, but to come closer, to look. And ever since that, I really feel heaven is with me. This past Friday, I was invited to a special dinner. It was only about 20 people, and it was top leaders of faith. I mean, the Catholic bishop for the Dallas diocese was invited there, Bishop Burns. A top leader of the Jewish Defense Organization, Joel Schweitzer was there. There was the head of Faith Forward Dallas, Almas Mutzkatwela. She's an Israeli Muslim. There was the Imam of the Central Mosque downtown, Imam Shahid. No, I'm sorry. Shahid? No, Shahid's the last name, that's right. Imam Shahid and his wife. And there was a Dr. Robert Hunt from the Perkins School of Theology at SMU. And there was me at that dinner, representing the unification movement. I was invited there by Mark Romney, who had spoken here at the American Clergy Leadership Conference meeting we had in January. And what was so stirring is that most of those people had met me before in interfaith work. The only person who hadn't was Joel Schweitzer. But everyone else had. The bishop, though, hadn't. The Catholic bishop had never met me before. I'd met his predecessor before, but I'd never met him. But it was so amazing to be at a dinner in a private home in Highland Park and be considered on an equal footing with all of those people. Oh, I forgot who else was there. Ricky Rush. Ricky Rush from Ibach, the pastor of Ibach. I forgot about him because he was supposed to arrive on time, of course, like all of us, and he arrived late. And it's just amazing, it's funny. It's a funny thing. It's kind of like what would happen to us if we were trying to have a meeting like that. So their home is in a central part of Highland Park. What happens a half hour before their meeting with us at 6:30? A few blocks power goes out in a few blocks of their neighborhood. All these alarms are going off. There was this loud alarm across the street, like, it was one of those like RoboCop type things that like, stand back, you know, the alarm has been sounded, somebody's on the property, but there was nobody on the property, the power had gone out. And I was like wondering, I arrive, I get out of my car, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on in this neighborhood. What's going on in this neighborhood? People are out in the streets, they're talking with each other. I'm like, wow. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but they were going through nuts. The woman who was hosting the party, everything was dark in the house. They had candles lit all over the place, and they were still lit when we walked into the house. She had caterers, and they were like, you know, whatever little light there was outside was the only light that they had. And I was the first to arrive. I rang the doorbell. It's about maybe 6:20. It called for 6:30. And nobody's coming, and I'm wondering, like, what is wrong with these people? I've rung the doorbell, but the doorbell was on some kind of emergency status. And I'm just waiting there thinking, maybe I'm at the wrong house. I'm at the wrong house. Anyway, I'm kind of adding too much to the story. But the story is that I set in motion with the wish paper, and I really feel that God is listening. And from that meeting, the people who hosted the meeting, the man of the home, his name is Bill Bennick. This man is incredible. He and his wife, more than 35 years ago, they established a foundation in India to help children that are born disfigured and unable to live normal lives. And they have helped, like, in their course of all those years, they have like 40,000 children. And I'm thinking, what have I done anywhere near that? And this man founded, he really felt that he had a calling. He founded the DFW Alliance for Religious Freedom. And he'll be coming here February 25th as our ACLC speaker of the month. And he'll speak on the threats to religious freedom in America. So I really want us to turn out and really hear what he has to say, young and old. You know, all of CARP should be here, and everyone should be here. I really feel God is working with us and moving with us. And, you know, we don't need to doubt ourselves. We don't need to doubt ourselves. Every one of you are astounding people who've been striving to live to an astounding level. And people can feel it. But it's wise. It's good to be wise. It's good to be prepared. So in my meeting with the person I was going to meet at the house was not that Bill Bennick. He was the host of the house with his wife Barbara, who works at the Meadows Museum at SMU and loves languages. She's an amazing woman. But the reason I was invited there was to meet one of the top Mormon leaders, one of the top leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have a president, and they have, surrounding that president, 12 apostles in the same configuration of Jesus and the 12. And they believe the president and any one of those 12 have the ability to revelate. That means they have the ability to still receive new, fresh revelation from God. And I knew that I was going to meet one of them there. His name is Elder Holland. So a few days before my meeting, I went to an LDS bookstore. There's only one in the whole DFW area, but it happens to be near where we bank for our church. And I'd seen it a few times. So I went there and I looked for a book of his, and I read halfway into the book before I went to this meeting. And there's a chapter in there called Lessons from Liberty Jail, which is about the imprisonment, the unfair imprisonment of Joseph Smith for several months with several of his followers, his brother and several of his followers. And what Elder Holland brings out of that chapter is that there are times in our lives when it looks so like everything's against us. But actually, God is not trying to punish us, or God is not trying to punish Joseph Smith. God is not trying to punish our true father. But the circumstances are blocking him and hindering him. But in that circumstance, you can use that either to pity yourself and cave in, or you can find strength in that situation. And that's what Joseph Smith had done. So by having read his book, when I gave him Father's autobiography, I could say to him, and actually what was interesting, he was preparing another book to sign and give to all of us. And I gave him my book, and mine he really personalized. And he was impressed that I had purchased his book and had read it. And then I could say to him, I think you'll get a lot out of this autobiography, especially because Reverend Moon was in prison 6 times. And one of the most bitterest times are detailed in this book when he was in Hungnam. You know, if I hadn't done homework, if I hadn't thought about him and a way to just go a little closer to him somehow, right? I'm not schmoozing him, I'm just trying to go a little closer to him. So, I'm not just praying for big fish, but I have to do my part as well. You know? And there are so many around, people that probably are around us all the time. You know, like this man who hosted the event. I didn't know that he was the president of the DFW Alliance for Religious Freedom, and that he had hosted at the School of Perkins, at the SMU, in cooperation with the DFW Alliance for Religious Freedom, had hosted an event there last October, which you attended, Kimie. That event that you attended, you probably heard him speak, the man I'm talking about. But he's the one who got the ball rolling. And then the professor who made it possible, who stood fast when there were voices saying, oh, no, you can't have a meeting about religious freedom. We have to hear the opposite side of it. And he said, excuse me, this is the School of Theology. You know, we're not holding this in another school. We're at the Perkins School of Theology, you know, and we're going to have a discussion about religious freedom. So it flew. But if he hadn't stood up with courage, it wouldn't have happened. That was another man that I met at the dinner on Friday night. So I just feel like things are moving at a pace that let's unite. Let's unite. Let's just try. Adieu? Adieu. Adieu. Wow. That concludes this part, but we still need to do the cake. What else do we need to do? Did everybody make their offering for True Parents' birthday? We could have some, you can come up anytime to do that. But maybe we should do the cake now. We also have to do our offering, our regular offering. Yeah, are y'all gonna sing for the offering too? Okay, why don't we do that? Why don't we go to the offering song, and we're gonna pass the regular baskets for tithes and offering. But if you haven't made your Holy Day offering, you can come, be sure to come up and make it there. It's a separate place. The basket is for the Holy Day. The ones that are handed around are for tithes and offering.